So one of the phenomenons in psychology that teams need to be aware of is something called groupthink. Now, groupthink is a psychological term given to a situation where a group of people eventually just sort of reinforce an idea, and they can't see the cons of that idea. They just seem to reinforce how great an idea is and end up in what's called groupthink. Now, the reason I mention this is that sometimes as data professionals, we're asked to solve problems. Okay, so we're given very broad questions like, we've got this problem where sales are reducing, or there's a reduction in sales. How do we reverse that? And so we get together as a team and we try and look at the data, and we analyze things, and we do a bit of exploratory analysis. And what happens is that we find things and we get all excited. We think, oh my God, this is a really good idea. And what happens is the phenomenon of groupthink then occurs, where if you have sort of someone who's a strong leader who sort of advocates a position saying this is really good, we found this interesting piece of insight, we should go with it, try and build models around that, try to understand how we can reverse the decline in sales. And then what happens is people around them start also reinforcing that idea. They start affirming that it's a good idea. And actually what happens is that if someone dissents, if someone has an alternative view, because the majority have now gone into groupthink, they'll actually stop that person from being able to air their opinion. Now, if you read the literature on groupthink, you'll find very famous examples. So one was the Bay of Pigs fiasco, where John F. Kennedy sent the US Army or US Marines to the Bay of Pigs in Cuba to, topple the government at the time, Fidel Castro's government at the time. And it's a classic example of groupthink, where they didn't think about all the cons. Everybody thought it was a good idea and they went forward, and they didn't. Obviously, it was a disaster. That's why it's called the Bay of Pigs fiasco. And so the same thing also happens in any group, that you end up actually, like I said, thinking that an idea is really good because someone in a strong leadership position, or someone who has a strong opinion or a strong presence, says that, and then people around them who either respect them or see them as an authority figure or see them as someone who's credible start then reinforcing that idea. Then what happens is that you go along a track of activity and execution that once it's presented to someone outside the group, they sort of turn around and go, well, we can't do that. So what you have to be very careful when you are in a group of individuals, and it doesn't really apply, it's not just exclusive to data professionals, it can happen in any group, it's a psychological phenomenon, it's something that we as humans do, is that you will end up in something in groupthink. So just be mindful of that when you are coming up with ideas, and you've someone suggested something, that all of you sort of step back and evaluate it objectively. Don't just go along with the idea, don't go along with the sort of the enthusiasm, don't go along with the sort of momentum that gets built, because you do get carried away in thinking it's a great idea because someone else has thought about it, and then other people are saying it's really good. So what you've got to really do is that when you are in a group, that you've got to make sure that all of you understand that you've got to look at things objectively. And as data professionals, that should be quite easy for us. We should look at it objectively from the data. We should also understand sometimes the limitations and the sort of restrictions that we have when we look at data. And sometimes, we can't with analysis, but if we understand what the limitations are, what the restrictions are, we're able to then say, well, actually, that may not be what it seems to be. Okay, so we should be able to approach it objectively and understand that sometimes something that looks good may not be good. So the next time you're in a group solving a problem, make sure that all ideas are evaluated objectively. Make sure you listen to everyone's opinion. Like I said, in groupthink, when groupthink happens, people sort of close ranks, and people who have dissenting voices don't get their voice heard. So you've got to be very mindful and very conscious that you don't fall within that trap, especially if you're someone who's a natural leader or someone who likes to take control or be in charge, that you are aware that you don't create this groupthink phenomenon, and that you listen to everybody's opinion to make sure that what the idea that you've come up with is actually a good idea, and not just a good idea because you're within that group which has formed the sort of phenomenal groupthink. So it's always good that when you come up with an idea, think back to basics, think to understand, actually, is this a good idea in terms of what we found? Are there alternative sort of options? Are there alternative analysis that we've discounted? And also always go back to the core of what the business is asking. So if the business is asking you a particular question, make sure that you're actually aligned aligning and answering that question. Make sure that the answer that you're giving or the analysis that you have done, you look at it objectively and you understand that you've analyzed it correctly, and you're not just picking up on something because someone said something and then the whole group sort of aligns behind it and you end up trapped in a groupthink.